Hey guys, how you doing today? Just getting this set up a little bit better. I am just doing my dishes. If you follow the channel, you know every so often I just like to do a recording while I do my dishes at the same time. Yeah, everybody should do their dishes. I don't do my dishes nearly often enough, you know? I leave it until like the last possible moment when I've got like just enough. I'm like cleaning individual cutlery. Probably not the best way to go about things, right? Probably should do things more often. Try to turn it into a daily thing. I think that would actually make it a lot better for me. So, the big news is the fallout from, oh God, oh no, I'm blanking. Missouri? Minnesota? Oh no, I'm the worst social commentator that has ever been a social commentator. Oh no. Alright, Missouri. I think it's Missouri. Oh my God. Minneapolis. I did it. Minneapolis. The murder of George Floyd. So, lots of crazy new information is coming out because of the murder of George Floyd. And lots of incredible events have occurred because of the murder of George Floyd. So, where to start? First of all, there's been a takeover of Precinct 3 by the rebellion. I'm not going to call them rioters, by the way. I'm not calling these people rioters. I'm not calling them protesters. I'm not doing any of that. This is a rebellion. It should be treated as a rebellion. People should understand that we're rebelling against a system, that the system has failed us, will continue to fail us. It's designed to fail us. And it's the black community in America. You can just look at the black community in America and you can see what we are all going towards, right? The absolute abandonment, the absolute disenfranchisement of the entire society. And so now, other movements are popping up all over the place now in support of those of the rebellion. This does have the potential to be like an Occupy Wall Street moment. This has the potential to spread throughout the country, to become a moment that articulates the rage of the populace. And the populace is absolutely correct to be filled with rage in this moment. The thing that I keep saying over and over again, right, is that these neoliberals, these conservative types, actually do not understand exactly how badly they've fucked up. They don't fully grasp or comprehend exactly how badly they have completely fucked themselves over. Like, we do not believe a word you say. And if you say something in support of neoliberals or conservatives, you are automatically labeled as a buffoon. Like, not a minor disagreement, not, oh, well, we can have different ideas and all of this. You're a barbarian sociopath. You're a person who wants other people to die. You're happy watching other people die. You took a look at the murder of George Floyd and said, haha, that black guy died. That's where you are if you are a neoliberal. And if you think otherwise, you are wrong. And that's because you don't understand how badly you fucked up, right? This is the kind of thing that will not be ameliorated through apology. So they laid here's exactly what I'm talking about. So they've laid charges finally against the murderer, Derek, whoever his name is, right? I don't even want to bother learning this guy's name. He's such a fucking sociopath. So the murderer, they've laid charges, 3rd-degree murder, right? Not 1st degree, which is obviously what it was. He obviously planned it. He obviously tried to do it. He obviously did it. We've got it on footage, like we've got it on tape, right? Just casually murdered a guy. And they're gonna let him off with just like the smallest little, like maybe he'll be dishonorably discharged, right? Maybe that'll happen to him. And they'll try to pass that off as justice, and they'll try to say, oh, okay, time to get through this, time to get past this. People are no longer going to accept that, right? And where this gets scary for the neoliberals, right, for this group of fascists who have taken over the country, is that like when they beat Rodney King, right, back in the 80s, when they beat him and those riots came out, it was black people fighting against the police. Go take a look at who the protesters are. When there's this wonderful photo of the rebellion taking over the 3rd precinct, right? And there's a bunch of people standing in front of the precinct, a good amount of black people, obviously, and a good amount of white people, right? Because what's happening in America is that poor white people are starting to realize that they've been played, right? That this game of racial division that exists in the United States has completely fucked them over as well. They're also being abandoned the way that the black community is abandoned in the United States. And so they are seeing themselves in now their black brothers and sisters, and they're fighting the same fight. So poor white people and poor black people are beginning to ally, right? And it's going to happen very quickly because there's less and less, I like to believe anyway, there's less and less racists around. Or at least if there's less racists, if there isn't less outright racist, there's more people, more white people willing to actually ally themselves with the black community. That they don't see themselves as outsiders, or they don't think black people are uncouth or dingy, right? So because of this allegiance, right, between poor black people and poor white people, this could be the end of neoliberal capitalism, right? That neoliberal capitalism has absolutely fucked itself so hard that it's alienated the one group that it needed to hang on to, which are poor white people, right? It needed poor white people. Who else is going to work at your Best Buys and your Targets and your your shitty McDonald's and all this kind of stuff, right? It's poor white folk are going to work there, right? Who's going to work at your Starbucks, right? Poor white folks. But now they've been alienated so badly that they're happy to join forces, especially after such an overt act of lawlessness, right? Because there isn't really a rule of law that exists in America. And I think that's what these protesters are ultimately going to argue about, and what they're ultimately going to argue for, which is a return, or at least an adherence, to some kind of rule of law. Because America has not adhered to a rule of law in 40 years, during the neoliberal period. And so the neoliberal establishment is going to attempt to, okay, they're going to give a little slap to this Derek guy. Maybe he won't be a cop anymore, right? And then their chief of police is going to stand up and try to say some speech about unity and how we need to come together now that justice has been served. I don't think that's going to be acceptable. I don't think that's going to be acceptable to people. They're going to want to see, and I know I do, like, I think the chief of police should resign. I think that this guy, Derek, should absolutely be charged with first-degree murder, because it's obvious that he planned it. It's obvious that he wanted to do it. And it's obvious that he did it. Right? We've got the footage. It's right in front of our faces, and the fact that it's taken so long and it's taken such a sustained, literally the people had to take over a precinct building, had to take over a police building before they even talked about laying charges on this guy. That's a total failure. That's a complete failure, a complete breakdown of leadership. That's a complete breakdown of the establishment. That's a complete breakdown of that's just a complete breakdown, on all possible levels. So I don't think the people will be satisfied unless the chief of police resigns, unless there is a significant change to the way the police force is structured. I wouldn't be too surprised if people really just were like, time to clear house, right? Like, if you're a police officer, you're no longer a police officer, right? Like, the level of disregard for the populace. And, like, it's really obvious that the police don't care about the populace. They view the populace as their enemy, right? That's really obvious. I've seen videos of cops, like, just driving by peaceful unarmed protesters, and just pepper spraying them out of their vehicles. Like, you don't do that if you're trying to actually find unification, or you're trying to care about anybody, right? And the people that are doing that should be kicked off the force. It's just without a doubt. But here's the thing about America, right? Americans are highly propagandized. They take a look at something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? Brooklyn Nine-Nine is actually a delightful show. I laugh when I watch that show. It's a funny show. I enjoy the actors. I enjoy the characters quite a bit. Funny, entertaining show that is 100% pro-police propaganda, right? It without a doubt. Like, it is designed explicitly to have the populace sympathize with the role of the police, and to humanize police in a manner that tries to convince you that the police forces exist for the benefit of the populace. That's why it's always like, yeah, we're going after this kingpin Falcone, right? Like, Brooklyn Nine-Nine's not going to run a story about, you know, how they murdered a guy in the street, right? You're not gonna see these characters be like, oh no, Sully, you kneeled on a guy's head until he died. Oh no. That's not going to happen, right? Because it's pro-police propaganda. It's not supposed to tell the truth. It's supposed to create a narrative. It's supposed to create a fiction that doesn't actually exist. Like, the reality is that Andy Samberg's character, whose name eludes me, I'm having real trouble with names today, but Andy Samberg's character, right, he would just be pepper spraying people out of his vehicle. That's what he would be doing, right? He would, yeah, right? Cool. That's what he would be doing. Right? And people on the force would love him for it. They'd be high-fiving him and be like, hey, yeah, I saw what you did. You got those protesters, right? That's, and of course, if Brooklyn Nine-Nine ever decided to tackle this issue, which they won't, because they understand that it's a losing proposition for them, they would attempt to paint it as like, okay, there's just like a one bad cop thing. They'll admit that. There's been, like, bad cops, right, on that show. But right now, because of this situation with George Floyd, all cops are bad cops. All cops are bad cops. If you're standing up and you're protecting the murder of George Floyd, and if you're attempting to protect this obvious sociopath who murdered him, who executed him in cold blood, i.e., if you are the police force, you're a bad cop. And that's just the way it's going to be until we see significant resignations, a significant clearing of houses, significant changes to the way police training is, and perhaps even a full disarmament of the police forces. That's something that's been talked about, that, of course, right-wingers don't take very seriously, but I think it's absolutely crucial that the police force is disarmed. But that's just one man's opinion, and of course my dog disagrees. Milo's very cute, but he is 100% hard right. We disagree on a lot of things, he and me. Fortunately, he's got about the same level of intelligence as a right-winger. Hey, that's horrible, I shouldn't have said that, that's awful. Oh well, I did. So this rebellion's going to spread. Now you've got the president. Let's talk about what the president's doing during all of this. First of all, he's made his position very clear. These people are scum because they are going out and protesting a murderer. They are wrong to... Oh yeah, and absolutely hilarious things are coming out. Like, I didn't even bring up, like, we now know that the riots, so the Target riot, the burning of this target was started by the police, right? What's called agent provocateurs. This is a really well established, really well embedded police tactic, right? That they go into otherwise peaceful protests and they begin destroying property and they begin causing violent movements, because that way, once the populace is baited into going along with violence, i.e. looting the target, then they can use more authoritarian measures against them, right? And that's 100% the strategy that they're focused on here, right? Destroying their own property so that they can arrest protesters, so that they can quell the rebellion. Like, we've got a guy on tape who's obviously, like, he's dressed up in, like, military level gear, holding an umbrella, smashing some windows, and a bunch of people take a look at that video and they're like, oh, that looks like this cop over here. And so they do a side-by-side and it's like, yep, that's the guy. And then even the guy's ex-wife comes out and is like, yeah, that's him. Like, so not only are they murdering people in cold blood on the streets, they're also starting riots in order to clear any protest against this, right? This is where we're at. And now you've got the president who's talking about sending in the National Guard. Now, I can't even begin to tell you how bad a decision that is, right? It is a very bad decision to bring in the National Guard to clear something like this out. You don't have a casus belli to do it. So you lose a lot of respect, you lose a lot of prestige. Like when Obama cleared out the Occupy encampments, he was able to say these encampments have now lost control. There's a lot of lawlessness happening in these encampments. And the thing is that the occupiers knew it and they understood it. And so when the clearouts happened, he had a casus belli. He had a reason for doing it that was accepted generally by the populace, which is what a casus belli is. You have a claim that everyone will accept. And Donald Trump has no such claim, right? Absolutely, the people in the rebellion are in the right. Absolutely. And you can't argue with it. A man was murdered in cold blood on the street. We have evidence of it. Like, we filmed it. We watched it happen. You can go watch it happen right now. I think you'd have to be absolutely the most cruel, malicious person alive to see that murder and side with anyone but these protesters, the rebellion. To watch that murder and then be like, oh yeah, police, yay. I mean, the reason Donald Trump is like police yay is because police operate for his benefit. They don't operate for the benefit of the populace, obviously, certainly not the black community. And so sending in the National Guard, there's a lot of layers on that, right? You're talking about the full militarization, like you're talking about fascism is really what you're talking about. You're talking about the militarization of your police forces. You're talking about suppressing otherwise peaceful protests with military force. You're talking about kicking off a civil war is really what you're talking about, right? Because rest assured, the rebellion is willing to escalate. The rebellion is willing to escalate. For sure it is. Because you've left them with nothing. That's the thing, right? You've left them with nothing. You didn't come and aid them in the middle of a pandemic, right? You gave trillions of dollars to your billionaire buddies. You looted the treasury. You didn't send a lick of help to these poor people. And now you're murdering them in the streets, and they're just supposed to accept all of this, right? And this goes back to what I've been saying the whole time, which is these neoliberals do not understand how badly they've fucked up. They do not understand how really, really difficult it is going to be for them in the future, right? That it is extremely likely that, like, you take a look at people like AOC, Bernie Sanders, right, who have ended up just kind of being, Democratic stooges for the most part. They speak flowery words, but they vote. Like, all that $1 trillion bailout for the corporations, for the corporate sector, they went along with that. But those guys are just the tip of the spear. And as more and more people begin to acknowledge and rally around and organize around this concept that neoliberalism is a failed religious ideology, the neoliberals that are currently in power are going to get absolutely rolled. And they should be. Like, people like this Derek, this cop, this murderer, like, this guy should, at the bare minimum, spend the rest of his life in prison. Like, that should be the bare minimum for a guy like that. Anything worse than that, I'm completely on board as well. I mean, for God's sakes, like, this, in the American system, they'll lock up, like, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, people who, like, say, hey, there are war crimes happening here, and then they have to flee for their lives or face permanent incarceration and torture. But if a man murders a black man in the street, wide open, oh, that's totally fine, right? And I think people are just beginning to see more and more that they don't actually live in a civil society, they live in an empire, right? And the empire needs to sustain itself. And it's attempting to sustain itself. And so this George Floyd murder has really cracked open a lot of people's consciousnesses that, like, there is a moment where things are obviously wrong. Like, obviously wrong. Like, but it seems like 2020 is like the year of that, where things are obviously wrong. It is obviously wrong that a government ignores its citizens' needs in the middle of a pandemic. That's obviously wrong, right? It's obviously wrong that a government assassinates a foreign leader in order to attempt to kick off a war to steal their resources. Like, that's obviously wrong. Like, it's obviously wrong to attempt to form a coup to overthrow a democratically elected leader. These things are obviously wrong. Like, there's no argument otherwise that has any credibility whatsoever, which is why the neoliberals just don't talk about them, right? Because they know they can't win if they actually talk about things as they are. They have to talk about things in this with this kind of religious ideology, because neoliberalism isn't an economic system; it's a religious ideology, and they don't actually attempt. They just make it try to sound like economics, right? They make this failed ideology sound like economics, but in reality, it's just a religious ideology that has co-opted all of their other, like, Christianity doesn't exist in the United States. It's not a formal existent thing. Capitalism has just taken over Christianity and used the language of Christianity in order to convince people who actually might actually be interested in Christian ideas and ideology to convince them to become capitalists. Because that's how it works, right? If you can convince people that Jesus likes profits, right, then you can convince them of whatever you'd like. And there's going to be a pretty major reckoning. There's going to be a pretty major reckoning that's going to come out of all of this, right? People are not going to accept this any longer. They're certainly not going to accept being murdered in the streets. They're not going to accept the diminishing wages. They're not going to accept any of this kind of stuff. And, like, like, Joe Biden is the guy that gets put up to fight against Donald Trump, like that kind of thing. It's just become this, like, cartoon caricature. And what's going to happen because of the George Floyd murder, because of the rebellion, this completely successful rebellion, by the way. They've taken over like a government precinct, right? This is a major moment in American history. This could be like a Tea Party moment, not the recent movement of the Tea Party, but like the rebellion where they threw tea into the harbor. This could be that kind of moment. And places could literally just go and take over these institutions and just say, no, we no longer accept this kind of behavior. And unless the American government is willing to launch full-scale military action against its own citizens, these sorts of events will only empower the citizenry further, which it should. Because what we're experiencing needs to end. It absolutely should end. The era of neoliberalism needs to be over. And I think that people are showing more and more their willingness to fight for that. And they're going to continue fighting for that. And we should continue fighting for that. Because, fuck these neoliberal sociopaths. Fuck these neoliberal sociopaths. Alright, this one was pretty long, but lots of dishes to do. I hope you guys are having fun out there. I hope you're having a good time. Join a protest movement. Get out on the street. Get something done for real. Alright, I love you all, guys. Good luck out there.